My name's Diana Pound and I'm the founding director of Dialogue Matters. Dialogue Matters works to help people make better decisions about the environment. At Dialogue Matters, our main activities are to design processes of negotiation and discussion that lead to wiser and better decisions for the environment, for nature, climate and people. But we do that sometimes at local level and sometimes at strategic levels, so at country level or multi-country level, through to global. We've done work on global water futures and global climate change work. So we work at multiple different scales. We also work on land, on sea, on topic bases related to the environment. And we don't just design and deliver and report on dialogue processes, but we also train people and we also give advice and we also do research. So we've been working on a multi-stakeholder discussion and negotiation about a tree strategy for Jersey. And that brought in everybody from the government through to tree surgeons and people in tree nurseries. So that's multiple different types of knowledge coming together to work out what need to be the priorities for Jersey as they move forward. We're also doing a similar project in terms of scale for the Quantock Hills, which is called Quantock Futures. And they're very mindful that with climate change, there's going to be really quite drastic changes to that landscape because they've got beautiful, iconic beech trees, and those are not going to survive the kinds of climate that the Quantock is going to experience. And so what do you do then? Are you going to have a treed landscape? And if so, what trees are you going to start planting now to replace those beautiful beeches? And what are the opportunities of that? And what are the challenges of that? And what else does that affect around society, around food growing, around farming practices? And so they're having that discussion. So we do marine work as well. An example last year was that we helped people in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. So researchers, about 70 researchers, think about how they could use knowledge from this extraordinary survey they've done of dolphins and whales and other large mammals in those seas, and how can that be got into policy and practice as fast as possible to start putting in conservation measures for those species. So it can be local, place-based, strategic, international, a mix. Our approach is characterised by a number of principles and practices that apply regardless of the context. So whether we're working in a conflict management context or we're working where people haven't even come together before and there is no past history, but they need to build consensus about a process of change, and whether that's local or national or international. But the first step has to be scoping and discovery. What is really going on? What is the past history? What are the spatial scales? What level of influence can people have? And who would be in a balanced mixed group to do the deliberations? And then how do we find those people and who might they be? And then we map that out across however many months or even a couple of years, one process. So what time scales does it need? And often that's constrained by budgets and external things to really what would be an ideal process. But then once you start the process, we always start with a vision, and we ask people to imagine themselves at a future point and how good things are then, and then start exploring what do they know about the current context, so what information they've got. And that's not just scientific, that could be cultural, it could be economic, it could be social. So sharing loads and loads of information. It could be using creative methods. Sometimes we ask people to draw or bring pictures. So lots of exploring of what we know about the current situation, and then exploring what's already going well to take you towards the vision and what more do you need to do. And then you get into the action planning of the top things, who's going to do what and when to make it happen. And we also usually facilitate how do we keep working effectively together type questions, so that it's not just a standalone dialogue, but it flows through into ongoing implementation and continued working and continued sharing of resources to bring about change. My understanding has changed drastically really through my professional career until I started Dialogue Matters. So I came out with an environmental science degree and landscape ecology degree. So I was already very early in, long before most other people, thinking more about systems and how different bits of the system work together. Hadn't really factored people in. And I came out with that scientism sort of set of values where science is the only way of knowing. And if we could just convince people of the science and that the problem is an information gap and we need to persuade people the science, and then they'll all change what they do. It's about how we communicate effectively with each other, how we negotiate, how we find those multi-benefit solutions that bring about really great change. And when it comes to environmental work, there has been such a tradition of linear, narrow, siloed thinking about how do we look after the nature and our life support systems over the long term. And it's been very science driven, like other forms of knowledge don't matter and aren't relevant, and lack of systems thinking, lack of how do things react with each other, and both socially, economically and environmentally. And it's only when you bring all the different knowledges together that are relevant to the topic at the scale, at the governance scale you're working at, that you can really start finding those interventions, those changes that will catalyse really good change, not just small incremental change, but significant change in that context. So when I think about the role of an environmental manager today, I actually think about what we've got and what we need. And I think those are two very different things. So I think most environmental managers will have come out of their various degrees and qualifications with a strong, very, very strong, almost faith that science and technical knowledge, engineering knowledge are the things that should determine the way forward. And with quite a narrow understanding of the complexity of the systems that we're intervening in. And so I think the role today is not what the role needs to be today, and certainly not tomorrow. So I think the role has massively got to shift. I think all the universities got to shift how they train people. I think the people side has got to come to the fore. I think systems thinking has got to be absolutely at the core of how we go forward in building up the environmental managers of the future. I also think we need to be a whole lot more inclusive about who gets into the environment sector. We did some dialogue last year about the barriers and solutions for people of colour and black people to get into and progress in the sector, and that revealed some really shocking stuff that absolutely needs to be addressed. Teamwork is such an important part of being an environmental manager and working in the environment sector. We're a really strong team within Dialogue Matters. That includes our core staff and our associates, and we don't just work together, we collaborate and we have fun together, especially when we're travelling away for work. We will ensure that we often stay over an extra day somewhere and go visit some part of the landscape or the seascape and be together as a group of people to build team. We also help people in the dialogue processes that we're doing. So they have to build teams to collaborate going forward and take forward whatever they've agreed and build that social capital, that trust, that willingness to share resources. So that's another area that I think team is really important. We have to be a little bit careful about building team with the organisations that commission our work. And that's because we come in as neutral third parties. So we're there on behalf of everybody, including, but not only, that commissioning body. So we build rapport and we work in very friendly and informal ways with them, but we can't fully be seen or function as a team with them, because obviously that would cause anxiety or distrust in the process from stakeholders with other kind of interests. So, but I think team is just such an essential part of how we need to work together. I think there's some real crucial keys to team working, and I think they're not always well understood. So there's a model that we use in our work, and it's like an iceberg, and the top of the iceberg, the bit that's visible above the surface of the sea, that bit is the task. What are we here to achieve together, and how do we need to achieve it, and what resources do we need to achieve it? And then underneath that is what we call team, and that's all the attentiveness to each other's well-being. Are people feeling appreciated? Do they feel listened to? Is their knowledge being harnessed? Are we working together well in a kind of social way? And too often you can get so task focused that you're not being sufficiently attentive to those interpersonal dynamics and the well-being of the people within the team. And we get like that. We just come out of an incredibly intensely busy time, and we were very mindful that we'd all got very, very task focused. And the more task focused you get, you just get driven by the task and the timeframes and the urgency and the deadlines, and you can become quite brusque or neglectful maybe. And I think that attentiveness to both the sort of interpersonal side of effective team and the task, because if you just got focused on the interpersonal side, you never get the task done. If you just focus on the task, it can sustain for a while, but it will collapse under the stress of people not having that relational caring side for each other. So that's a model we use and pay attention to in our own work and when we're facilitating others. So I think I'd start with EQ skills. So EQ skills around how you relate to others, build rapport, manage your own emotions and your own skillfulness in emotional intelligence. And those are very learnable. They're not something you've got or you've not got. They are very learnable. And I think many of us come into this profession, I include myself in this, who are actually quite maybe shy and introverted, and we weren't necessarily so skillful in those things. But oh my goodness, do we need them? We need people who can inspire others, build rapport, bring people with you, work collaboratively with others, work as equals with others. I would also talk about looking after your own mental health. I think it's really, really hard to be working on the front line of the climate and nature crisis continually every day. So that would include getting out in nature, having purpose, having friends around you, giving yourself downtime, and just really being attentive to your mental health, because when you hit those points of eco grief, you just need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go forward with all the determination you can. So that's EQ skills and mental health. And then I would also pay attention to professional skills, which a lot of people don't come out of university with. So that would be things like time management, being able to write or speak in a way that the people who are receiving those messages can really understand, as well as, of course, the grounding in science and understanding how to apply science knowledge and interpret it and use it. So I think that would be the package.